Let's cross now to our regional correspondent, Gulliver Craig. He's in Kiev. Gulliver, what can we make of what we're hearing from the White House? And have we heard anything from the Kremlin yet?
Well, there's really very little to go on. The White House readout of this conversation basically only says things that Joe Biden had already said he would say when he was going to speak to Vladimir Putin, threatening those sanctions if there was an escalation, if there was military action from Russia, and voicing concern about this very, very large Russian military buildup just on the other side of the Ukrainian border, or at least according to US intelligence, it's very large indeed. And people here in Ukraine also seem convinced that it's larger than what we've seen earlier, what we saw in springtime of this year. Anyway, very little to go on from the White House and nothing to go on whatsoever from the Kremlin. So far, they haven't published any kind of readout of the call, just a photograph of Vladimir Putin sitting looking at the screen with Joe Biden on the screen. Some Ukrainians I've been seeing on social media are saying that that's a bit ominous and perhaps means that the conversation didn't go very well, seeing as the Kremlin don't know what to say about it. But does the fact that the conversation didn't go well, if it didn't, is that bad news for Ukraine or good news? We can only speculate, really.
Well, Gulliver, you just mentioned there about social media and what Ukrainians are saying about this meeting. What is the mood among Ukrainians, and what does Ukraine want from the U.S.?
Well, one might say what Ukraine would really like from the US would be further sanctions against Russia already, because we're all talking at the moment about will Russia invade Ukraine, in the eyes of many Ukrainians, rather forgetting the fact that Russia already invaded Ukraine, annexed the Ukrainian peninsula of Crimea in 2014, and via what Ukrainians simply see as Russian proxies, who are called separatist republics and sometimes referred to as rebels, but who are clearly controlled, funded and fully backed by the Kremlin, has taken over a swathe of the Donbass region in the east of the country, where fighting continues almost daily, almost weekly. There are Ukrainian fatalities in this conflict in eastern Ukraine, which Ukrainians blame absolutely squarely on Russia and would like to see further action from the US to try to stop Russia or get Russia to desist from what it's already and currently and continuing to do in eastern Ukraine. That said, I think the Ukrainians are ringing alarm bells rather less loudly about the perspective of full-scale invasion. They just don't think that that would be a rational thing for Vladimir Putin to do because of the military costs that Ukraine would inflict on Russia, because of the costs in terms of sanctions from the US and other Western countries, which they've made very, very clear they would impose, because of potential further increased Western aid to Ukraine if that happened. So Ukrainians are sort of saying, well, we can't completely count on Vladimir Putin being rational, but if he is rational, that's not what he would do. What he's more likely to do is carry on what he's already doing, which is maintaining a conflict sort of simmering away in the east of the country, which already prevents Ukraine from joining NATO. Obviously, Ukraine's not going to join NATO while this conflict is still going on. Ukrainians are hoping, without very much real optimism about it, that somehow Western pressure on Russia will bring an end to this conflict that's already going on and has been going on for 8 years.
Okay, thanks a lot for that insight. Our regional correspondent, Gulliver Craig, reporting from Kiev. Thanks, Gulliver. Other countries are considering